over the past decade, there has been a major push towards the benefits of veganism, along with the demonization of meat. I have been observing this, very closely looking at the propaganda and the lengths these people will go through to promote their agenda. Let me say from now, I have no issue whether you eat meat or not, but I have an issue with eating bugs. I find it interesting that for those of us who grew in the West, processed food was highly accessible and promoted, yet we're also taught that it's bad for us. But now they are creating lab-grown meat, and this is supposed to be a good thing? There is a huge push on the reduction of CO2 emissions from the promotion of hybrid vehicles, further carbon taxes in cities, and now on our food. Let's look at the carbon tax and its impact on meat and livestock. But first, let's establish what a carbon tax is. A carbon tax is a fee imposed on the burning of carbon-based fuels such as coal, oil, and gas. The primary goal of a carbon tax is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, which is alleged to be a major driver of climate change. By putting a price on carbon, it forces individuals to spend more on products, which have links to higher CO2 emissions. Now, how does this relate to the meat industry? The livestock industry are alleged to be a significant contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, particularly methane and nitrous oxide. Methane, for instance, is released during digestion by animals such as cows and sheep, while nitrous oxide is emitted from manure and fertilizer use. A carbon tax applied to the meat and livestock sector would mean that producers and consumers would have to pay for the emissions generated by these activities. What I find suspicious is the claim that such a tax will encourage more sustainable agricultural practices and an overall reduction of meat consumption, thus lowering emissions. Yes, meat consumption will be lowered, but only due to its price and availability. But you're telling me that these masterminds couldn't think of a better solution without taxing the people? It's interesting, as we tend to forget where our taxes go. We hear the term so much that we forget that tax equals funding. Now, the World Health Organization have been increasingly vocal about the health impacts of diet, particularly the consumption of red and processed meats. In 2015, the World Health Organization classified processed meat as a Group 1 hazard, indicating sufficient evidence that it causes cancer. Red meat was classified as a Group 2A hazard, meaning it is probably unsafe to humans. This stance has not only influenced public health recommendations, but also merged with environmental concerns, bringing together the dual benefits of reducing meat consumption for both health and the planet. The World Health Organization's activism has supported a broader movement towards more plant-based diets. Over the past decade, veganism has gained significant traction, driven by health concerns of meat consumption, increased awareness of the environmental impact of livestock farming. Thus, many have been influenced into having plant-based diets. Governments and organizations have begun to promote the plant-based diet through guidelines and policies. The alleged estimate of savings from reduced climate emissions were at around £100 million annually. However, a report from Rothamsted Research concluded that a tax on red meat to curb climate change could do more harm than good. Dr. Taro Takahashi, an agricultural economist at the University of Bristol, led the study and highlighted that the economic losses would affect not just livestock farmers, but society at large. Dr. Takahashi stated that while a red meat tax could reduce greenhouse gas emissions, it could also drive grazing livestock farms out of business. The impacts would extend to consumers, supply chains, and rural communities reliant on farming. A study estimated that a moderate meat tax could lead to £242 million in annual economic losses. May 2024, Dale Vince, major donor to the Labour Party, called for a red meat tax to combat environmental and health issues. Vince, who previously supported Just Stop Oil, argued that such a tax would deter harmful consumption and promote sustainable choices. Despite Rishi Sunak's earlier pledge not to introduce meat-related taxes, Vince, who has donated large sums of money to the Labour Party through his green energy firm Ecotricity, believes the tax could effectively change consumer behavior. His opinion, and I quote, "And so it makes sense to put a tax on that to steer people's behavior. That's how taxes work. It has worked before." In addition to the economic arguments behind the demonization of meat, I wonder if there is a more sinister agenda at play. Will those promoting alternative diets also be eating insects, or is that reserved for a certain demographic? The carbon tax, while being an effective ploy in addressing climate change, also underpins a new wave of control, broader economic consequences, and a threat to our individual freedoms. So, what are your thoughts on this? Leave your comments below. Spread the message. God bless you, and I'll see you soon.